Support for Consider This is provided by the University of Nebraska at Omaha College of Communication, Fine Arts, and Media.
From the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
I worry about what's going to happen with those good younger writers. But I don't think the book is in any particular peril. I think the book is going to survive.
Certainly good news to writers everywhere, including a group right here in Nebraska. Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, Voices from the Plains. Joining us to talk more about it are Wayne Anson, president of the Nebraska Writers Guild, and Court Vernald, editor and creator of the anthology. Thank you both so much for being here. Welcome. Wayne, we're going to start with you. What is the Nebraska Writers Guild?
Well, the Nebraska Writers Guild is an association of writers of all forms and genres, including also then people who support writing like librarians, marketing, publishing people, the whole realm that it takes to get a good book to the work. We also have newspaper people. We're a 501c3 and we are growing like a weed.
Wow.
We were founded in 1925 and we're one of the oldest writers guilds in the nation that's still active. We were founded by some pretty awesome people, Bess Streeter Aldrich for one, Louisa Pound, John Neihart, Marie Sandoz, names that most folks in Nebraska at least have heard of. Also other names at the time were,
Willa Cather?
Willa Cather was our first member, so she wasn't the founder, but she was one of the first members. And Dorothy Canfield Fisher was one of our founding members as well. They had this idea that they wanted to help other writers become better writers and to help new writers be able to be the best kind of writers that they could be. So they were about quality literature coming from Nebraska, and they were already national figures on the stage of the nation themselves.
Now, how did you become involved in all of this?
I've been trying to think about that lately. I'm not really sure. I know I moved to Nebraska. I had a health issue, and so I moved back to Nebraska due to that. And I'm not sure how I found out about the Nebraska Writers Guild. I think I went online and ran into them and saw that they were having a conference. And I had enjoyed conferences before, and I decided, okay, you're going to be serious now for your next 30 years of life, and you're going to be a writer. So let's go to a conference. And from there, they were so welcoming, and I was a member, and next thing you know, I'm the president. So
Wow, so what do you like to write then, Wayne?
I've switched from nonfiction, which has been what I've written most of my life, to writing novels, and I'm about to put my first novel on the market.
So in the spirit of that, now that you're kind of towards the end, but at the beginning in some ways, what is that like? Because there are so many people out there who think, I want to do it, but they just don't quite get there. So how do you feel coming to the end of this, into the beginning of the next chapter?
Well, of course, there's a certain sense of satisfaction, but I think I got the greatest satisfaction when I actually started putting the words down on paper.
Oh.
That was the start that really made it become flowing, and then I took some studies to do that. So now that I'm at the end, I'm like, okay, I can do this. I've done it.
I'll be darned. Now, Court, how about you? How did you become involved in the Nebraska Writers Guild?
Well, I've been pretty much, I had a history of journalism and moved to Nebraska in 2003, and I'd heard about the organization even before I got here, how good it was. And being a writer, a serious writer, I looked into it, and it looked at me. A lot of things that the Writers Guild does with conferences and seminars are things that help a writer along in the journey to become a published author. And I was interested in joining in and helping out.
So you say it was so good. It takes quite a bit to keep a committee, let alone a guild, together, right? So when you say it's so good, what makes it that for you, Court?
Well, what the Guild offers, it's a community of nearly 300 authors, as Wayne will tell you, and they all come from, they write different genres, and they have different backgrounds. But the Guild itself, in its conferences and some of the presentations that we've done around the state, we hold seminars that can take a fledgling writer, show them how to improve as a writer and eventually become published, or just become out there so people know their talents.
Okay, so what's your story, Court? I mean, who was that for you? Or maybe you did never consider yourself a fledgling writer, but who helped you kind of turn the corner and get into this realm?
Well, I come from a family of a lot of writers and communicators, so it's always been in the house. I remember being 8 years old with a little Underwood typewriter, typing little Civil War stories. And my father was in publicity. My grandmother was a published author, and it was always in my family. So, and just writing was natural to me. I have an English degree from the University of Southern Oregon, a journalism master's in University of Oregon, and I've been wrote there, and just it's just part of my being.
I have to ask though, Court, did you have a plan B? If this didn't work, then this, or was it just always going to be?
No, I did have a plan B. I had a day job, and that was pretty much in production. And that was in newspaper and magazine production. That I did a lot of backshop stuff at newspapers and worked in magazines, everything from paste up and layout to sales and marketing as well. So I had a goal to be a publisher. So
okay,
in a sense that's happened.
I was going to say, so let's talk about your works to this point. So obviously you've written some things, and we're going to put a graphic up for our viewers, and you can tell us about what it is that we're seeing there.
Well, these are the 4 books that I've published, and the first one was Algonquin, and it's a coming-of-age tale set about 1964, and it's set in the Fox River Valley of Illinois, and because I lived in Algonquin, it was a wonderful bucolic town in the 60s where I grew up. It's changed since, and I wanted to preserve some of that in this book. And so it was like naturally the first one that I really got out there. Sister's Secret is the first suspense novel I've ever written. And then we got into The Keeper of the Ordinary and Keeper, Trial, and Vengeance. Those are 2 in a series, and there'll be a third probably in about a year or 2. And being in the Midwest, most of my characters and story is set in the Midwest. Keeper of an Ordinary is about a Chicago journalist who runs afoul of the Russian mafia while he's writing about human trafficking and prostitution. So he goes on a lam, and he ends up in South Omaha, and he buys a little corner bar like they have there. I love those little corner bars, and he calls it The Ordinary. It's an old colonial phrase. When they would, on the stage lines, they'd clear out the bottom part of a house, and they would be called keepers of an ordinary public house. And so he has his ordinary bar, and of course the Russians find him, and it's thrilling, shoot 'em up ending. But when I finished, I thought it was a one-off. When I finished, I thought, well, what happens to real people? Because my characters are all based in real life. And so Trial and Vengeance, the second one that just came out this summer, is what would happen to a normal person in that situation if you had a big gunfight in your bar or something like that. So the first part is a grand jury hearing, because repercussions, and then the vengeance part is what happens after the grand jury. And I was able to use a lot of my travels. I've traveled to India and various places in the world, and I was able to use locales and hill stations of India and in the Crimea and places like that for it. So it's a thriller, and again, I thought that was it, that was the story, but now I'm thinking there's a third somewhere, because I really like my character.
I find it fascinating. It's one thing to tell a story when somebody asks you that. It's another to write it, right? So to hear you just kind of, put that out there for us, it's another thing to imagine you actually sitting and typing it out. I want to talk about your most recent work, Voices from the Plains, and we'll put that up for our viewers as well. Snapshot of this. What is it, Court? Tell us what it's about.
Well, being part of the board of the Nebraska Writers Guild, we're a real proactive board, and what we are out there. Last year we did 6 corners of Nebraska in honor of the sesquicentennial, and we were in Chadron, Norfolk, Sarpy
McCook.
County,
McCook.
North Platte, and Kimball, and we did presentations. And that was one of the things that we got out there. But the other thing I want to do is, with all of the people in the guild, like we say, almost 300 people, there's so much talent, so many writers, so many different genres that they write in. We ought to put them all together in an anthology, and we ought to put it out there under, the imprint of the Nebraska Writers Guild.
Very cool. A lot of words thrown out with this. Anthology, collection, books. Is there a difference that's important for us to really note here?
Not really. One of the things that an anthology can, and I always think of those great Norton anthologies we all had in first year college, and they would follow certain periods of writing, but a lot of times they were literary miscellany, and it would be a lot of different things, but the writers of the time. Now I wanted collection anthology. It's semantical. We have writers from all different genres, and anthology is just a convenient term for it. So.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, to write your own book is one thing, to pull together all this information from all these different writers. Talk about just the mere coordination of this whole thing.
Well, we ended up with 468 pages over 60 writers, so it was a lot of compiling, coordination, formatting. We went through pinpoint editing down in Lincoln for some proofreading to make sure of that, because it's a big bugaboo, with that many pages. But it actually, having written a book, taking that from A to Z, I understood what was going on. I had a basic structure which was going to be like an excerpt from a novel, a poem, then a short story, and then break it up with a poem. And then so that we went sort of along a trail of the poets, instead of like putting them into compartments. We went along a trail of different writers. And also some of the stories that were submitted, they do follow sort of an arc of a lot of the interests, the readers and the writers in Nebraska.
Time is coming to mind here in terms of what on earth does it take. You get the submissions, you have to kind of rifle through them, make sure it all makes sense. And then there's the stress of, I'm representing the state here, right? So
Right.
Behind the scenes, Court, you make it sound like it was pretty easy. I can't even imagine. Talk about the logistics involved. You're receiving the information, you're trying to get it all lined up, and who's providing you feedback? Who's kind of that person that you're tapping into?
There were a lot of people involved. One of the writers, Faith Colburn, helped with the compiling. She and I pretty much, a submission would come in, we would look it over, and so this is good quality. This, I like this story. Let's put it over here. Then also we had the cover was done by Victorine Lesky, who's very talented in her covers, and a lot of her books show that. Like I said, we had a professional editing for proofreading just to make sure that everything was correct. I work with a formatter in Arizona who helps me with my books, and Sue Michaels, and she basically helped along the way. So we turned it around in 10 weeks, which is rather amazing. It was pretty much, submissions were open in October and done in October, and even then we got more than we can use, and I feel really sorry. But, some people I had to say, we're at 450 pages. I don't want to go to 1,000 pages. We'll get you the next time. And then through November, first it was basic formatting, then it went to the proofreader, and then we had it from December and I wanted to publish it December 15th, both as an ebook and also as a paper book, and we hit the deadline.
Well, is this punishment for yourself, Court? Or what were 10 weeks?
Yeah, well, I was open. I finished my book in the summer, and I wasn't going to start another one. I like a little down period.
Kind
I'll
of
write some
bored,
short
were you? Is that you just didn't have much to do, huh?
Oh,
so you
no, I have a
figured
9-to-5
take on
job,
this
but,
project, and then we go from there.
Yeah.
I want you to talk a little bit more about more than 60 writers involved in this, represented across the state. Who are these people? I mean, if you could sum them up, what's the common thread? Obviously, writing, but
Right.
but what are some of the other things that you could tell us about these writers?
You can jump in there, Wayne. It's like
He has a wide variety of individuals, all the way from doctors and lawyers to housewives
UNO
to
Professor
single
Hugh
people.
Riley.
Yeah.
Ah,
So
and,
they
and his
really
daughter,
just a
Takani Ferry, they
huge,
both submitted stories.
huge spectrum of individuals that write. It's really amazing to be in the Guild and see that. And they represented more than just Nebraska as far as people where they live, because we have members in 13 states and 2 different countries. And so, you can't really put a
Right.
one generic hat on them, because
But
they're
I think,
just,
I think
wow.
the most interesting thing is the genres that we represent. We have
Yeah.
Gina Barling, who writes mysteries. She's published 11 books. Charlene Neely, and I'm not going to read them all, but apologies for apologies for those that I missed.
Sure,
Charlene
sure.
Neely is a Lincoln poet. Faith Coburn writes historical fiction. We have Madeline Wiseman, Laura Madeline Wiseman, who's an award-winning poet. Victorine Lesky, who is a New York Times bestseller for romantic novels and things, and she did an excerpt in here.
And she did
gosh.
that as a self-published writer,
wow.
and on her very first romance novel. So she's
impressive.
a jewel.
Yeah, yeah.
And then also Barbara Salvatore, she writes Native American fiction. And so we really have kind of like hit every, every stop
Every
that we
possibility
could.
that,
Yes.
that you could. In all the time that you gentlemen have been doing this, and I'm going to talk specifically to those viewers out there who've really wanted to get into this, but for whatever reason didn't, is there a story that comes to mind of that person who you met and they said, I've been thinking about doing this forever and I just can't seem to find what it is to get me over to the other side? Is there a story coming to mind for
Well,
either of them?
I meet people all the time who say that I want to write a book, but I just don't know how to get started. I'm in a lot of workshops in Omaha, and I have people come in and say, well, I recommend that go to a workshop, become engaged with people who write. Everybody in the workshops that I participate in are very positive as far as like new people coming in. But I also highly recommend, join the Guild. Come on in. We have seminars for all levels of writers. You can meet people there. It'll spurn your imagination. It will make you want to write that book, and there'll be people there to help you along in that journey.
Okay.
The story that comes to mind was
Yes,
a
Wayne.
lady whose name is Tamsin Taylor, Tamsin Taylor. She grew up in a cult, and when she and her husband left the cult and they ended up divorced, she just decided that what she's going to do was be a writer. She didn't have education through 8th grade, and so she just went out there and started and went out and got herself educated, and now she's also a New York Times bestseller, and of course she comes around and does conferences like ours, encouraging those new writers and then those of us who've written more that, hey, keep at it. It's a good thing.
Very, very good. Thank
She
you.
was a speaker at one of our fall conferences.
Yeah, so you
very
just
well
bring those
received.
people in and you just watch them blossom, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, Court, now through this whole book, how many pages did you say?
468.
Okay, so 468 pages. You must have a favorite in there. Do you have?
I don't. How do you pick your children?
All right,
It's like-
so you must have one that you might want to enjoy reading for us.
Oh,
How
well, I
about
was
that?
thinking, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I could read my own.
That would be fantastic. We would love it.
And this is it's a short story, and it's a character with a moral dilemma:
Okay.
either faith, family, or the law.
Okay.
So, and I'm only going to read a couple pages here. It's not really that long, but
Okay.
I'll just
Please do.
jump into it.
You got it.
He didn't resemble my dad, not this shriveled, shrunken body swathed in a stained hospital gown, lying in a heap of bedclothes. Each day, nurses removed another machine, cable, or bottle until just a plastic tube looped over his ears and hissed oxygen up Dad's nostrils. His fuzzy white head sunk deep in the pillow. A smell like baby diapers pervaded the room. His eyes, deep in the sockets and bluer than I recalled, looked about the room, frightened. A framed bronze and brown portrait of Jesus clutching for his Sacred Heart hung at a tilt above Dad's bed. His breath came in heaves and left in rasps, off cadence with the clack of the oxygen machine. A shadow of the man up every morning at 4:15 and at the rail yards before first light. That was 40 years of bologna sandwiches on white bread wrapped in wax paper, a thermos of coffee in his lunch pail, an apple or banana, and a fresh red pack of Pall Malls in his breast pocket. He was good to go. Rarely did he spend 6 words in a conversation worth but 4, but I never wanted that look. Family crushed close around his hospital bed. Mom fingered her rosary, hovering at the head. She hadn't been born to the beads, but took to them with enthusiasm. Kaylee, my half-sister, leaned over the burnished guardrail, her young son alongside. She sniffled and wept. Sean and Molly, my half-brother and his wife, stood at Dad's left. A noticeable gap existed between Sean and his stepmother. Sean's preteens fidgeted and fought behind him. I stood uncomfortably at the foot of Dad's bed. I'm his youngest and in college. Everyone talked at once, competing in low tones. How are you feeling today, honey? Do you need more medication? You're looking better today, Daddy. Sean and Kaylee had broad, ruddy faces, while Mom and I had pale, sharply defined oval features like the difference between Ireland's green and orange. Did you eat? Your grandson James is here. Bet he got an A in math. His voice struggled through quivering bluish lips. What, dear, what? Mom leaned closer. The old man pulled in as deep a breath as he could. Flynn, I want to talk to Flynn. He coughed like gravel in a metal bucket. Flynn, honey, Mom waved at me. She took a step back and bumped into Kaylee's husband. Hey, watch it. Sister and brother exchanged irritated looks. Alone? Dad croaked. My brother glowered at me. Alone? Why alone? Mom wanted to know. My sister's mouth twisted sideways, her brows wrinkled above dagger eyes. She could go from cardinal sin to mortal sin in the blink of an eye. Alone, the old man impatiently repeated. Sean herded his wife and kids out, with a cutting glance back at me. Tell us what he says, Kaylee hissed in my ear as she and husband and son followed Sean. Mom reluctantly backed toward the door. She seemed panicked, rapidly rolling beads through her fingers. Close the door. Mom hesitated, yet closed the door. I shuffled to the head of the bed. I'm here, Dad. His freckled, bony hand shook as he reached for mine. The flesh of his arms, crisscrossed by purple veins and branded by welding scars, seemed almost translucent. His grasp was light and cold. Your mother says, his voice sounded more wind than words, we will all be together in heaven. That's what Mom did say. His blue eyes focused on me. Your mother, brother, and sister will be in heaven. I will not. Don't say that, Dad. You will. I didn't understand why he said this. We will be together for eternity, like the priest says. He cared little for our church's priest. I can't go to heaven. Can't go. They won't let in my kind. He sucked in deep, noisy breath. His eyelids twitched, his hand slipped back to the bed, and his head fell into the pillow. I thought I knew what bothered him. That was Vietnam. Dad, the country was at war. You served the country. You won't be held responsible for what happened in the war. No, Flynn. His eyes fluttered open, shimmering like iridescence of an oyster shell. I am not a good man. No, not everything is forgiven at death. I'll stop there.
Wow. So, Wayne, you hear that.
Yep.
What's coming to mind for you?
Oh, because I'm writing now, I look at things differently.
Yeah.
And so I see the setting of a scene, I see him setting the characters, and I see him introducing one kind of tension and then suddenly switching you to a totally different one that leaves you just even more hanging. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What can be troubling this old man?
Would be effective writing.
Yes.
Correct?
it
And
would
very
be.
well read.
Thank you.
Too. In just the few minutes that we have remaining, Wayne, I'll ask this of you in literally a minute here. How has publishing changed?
Well, it's kind of like going from clay tablets to printing presses. We've gone from everything being done by major publishers to now it is done by small and medium-sized publishers and by self-publishing. It's gone from the big publishers making the most money to now us independent authors made 40% of the income that went to authors last year.
Okay. And so, Court, for those people out there, one final push, 30 seconds here. What would you say to people who are wanting to do what you just did?
Do it. It seems simple, but just sit down and do it. A lot of people hesitate. Oh, I'm not good enough. You know what? You are. Everyone is. You know, and everyone has something to say. Everyone has experiences that are unique to themselves. Write it out. Learn your craft. If you want to write well, write.
Okay, everybody has the potential to be a voice from the plane, right? So as we close here, I want to put up a graphic so that if people want more information about what we've been discussing today, they can certainly go to this website. It is nebrascawriters.org. And then we picked the second one, copyright.gov, as just kind of a reminder, right, Wayne, to...
Yes, because as soon as you put the words down on paper, you have copyright, but if you want to have the strongest legal protection, you need to register it.
Yeah.
And so it's a good reminder that we need to keep things protective of ourselves as we write.
I'd like to thank the two of you for being here
like to
to
thank you
share
for
your,
having me.
Yes,
your
it was
time, your
wonderful.
expertise, and of course your story. Beautifully done. I want to thank our students who are working so hard behind the scenes, to everybody else for watching. As we close, a look at Hummel Park as seen through the lens of Stoyan Kresovich, a junior here at UNO. We will see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at netnebraska.org/Consider This. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.
Support for Consider This is provided by the University of Nebraska at Omaha College of Communication, Fine Arts, and Media.